Drive is pleased and honored to have this exclusive event for our collision clients. Long time coming and more to come. We have Jay Sicht here from editor-in-chief from Fender Mender magazine. He's the preeminent collision publication platform. This magazine, Fender Bender, is. I'm sure you've all read it, and I'm pretty honored to be a part of it as well. And if you want to know more of the direction of 2025 and what are some of the trends, he's the person to ask. So I'll turn it over to Jay.
Thank you, Cassie. I appreciate the invitation to join you today and thank all of your clients for listening to me speak. I would probably sum up what 2025 is looking like with what I'm calling the 3 T's. So tech, techs, and total losses. The first is technology, and that is you've got to know, the shops need to know what they're capable of taking in. I'm seeing more talk of shops specializing to where they're not going to try to take on every make and model as each make and model. I mean, as each OEM comes out with more and more different kinds of models, and we've got electric vehicles, we've got aluminum intensive vehicles. Not everybody is tooled up and trained to work on all of those, and so they're really taking a deep dive at what their local market is. Their paint companies can provide a heat map, they call it, some of them, to tell you what the registrations are in your market and what the expectation is for those vehicles to be repaired at your shop. The main thing, though, is to identify what you're capable of, what you're trained for, and what you're equipped for, and then knowing when to either turn that work away or possibly sublet that to a provider for like ADAS calibrations, for example. Or on the other hand, I'm seeing some shops that are doing some work that they traditionally were subletting. So I'm seeing some more interest in shops doing glass repair, glass installation, I should say, of fixed glass. So whereas you used to have a cold knife and the risk of what you were, if you didn't know what you were doing, maybe the risk wasn't as great. Nowadays, the windshield installation affects the forward camera. So that has to, even that's critical now. Um, they've got some complex tooling instead of the cold knife. I can remember the first, this was like 30, that was more than that. I hate to say how long ago it was, but it's more than 30 years ago, watching the guy put in a windshield in my car that I bought with a broken windshield, but I got it at a discount, and he just fought with that knife, had the propane torch burning, and he's heating up the knife, trying and keeps going at it. Well, nowadays they've got like this robotic, like the spider. I mean, some of you may be doing that already, I don't know, but where you can actually just kind of get it started, and it's like semi automatically cutting out the windshield. So going back to this here, though, it's really the shop needs the owner and operator needs to look at what makes sense for them. It doesn't make sense for probably every shop to work on every make and model, but if you're going to, make sure that you're doing it properly, for safety sake. Technicians, if they dive into a repair without the proper training and equipment, they could injure or kill not only themselves but others. A CCC's latest crash course report shows that electric vehicles make up about 6.8% of repairable claims, and that's up from just 1.4% in 2020. EVs, I think, with the incoming Trump administration and other factors, I think we're going to see that growth slow, but all signs point to electric vehicles still being a steady increase. So that's not gonna decrease. That is only going to go up, just not as fast of a pace as some may have thought just a few years ago. There are some, safety wise, there's training that you have to go through for that. High voltage electric vehicles require de-energization procedures, lineman's gloves, things like that. And then it's also important to access the OEM repair procedures every time that you're working on a vehicle, even if you worked on that same make, model, and year just last week, because they could have been updated since then. So OEM repair procedures is something that we've really seen a need to stress the importance of. We had just last year, we introduced our new award, the best repair planner and estimator. It's also called blueprinting. We only had so much room to kind of fit on the trophy, but on the award, but kind of use those terms interchangeably. But repair planning or blueprinting, really want to stress the importance of the thoroughness of that. And I got to tell you, I've looked at quite a few estimates or repair plans, and I was still kind of blown away with how many line items our winner had for what looked like a fairly simple repair. It was a light hit on well, it looked light, but I guess it did need a quarter panel actually. But anyway, it was a very drivable vehicle, and it was a practice estimate that our friends Mike Anderson at Collision Advice had put together, and they have an estimating exercise, and we just went over that, and it was a vehicle that was totaled already, and it was at the salvage yard, and they had to list everything that it required, on the technical side. So I've got more information there, but I think I want to move on a little bit about technicians. The we conduct an industry survey every year, and each year, or as it was last year, this past year, the insurer's influence on the repair process, that was the second biggest concern of all of our survey respondents. But it's probably no surprise to you all that the number one concern for them was the shortage of qualified technicians, and can't rely on poaching them from other shops anymore because everybody's facing the same problem. So we've got a number of different solutions to that, or at least we hope that they're solutions. The industry as a whole has kind of looked at that as, well, we need to attract more people to our industry who may be looking at other trades. And so they've got some kind of novel solutions for like the collision engineering program, which began at Rankin Technical College nearby St. Louis. Enterprise Mobility and Rankin partnered, and they have now expanded that to 6 other colleges across the country. I wrote about that last spring, and the way that program works is there's an 8-week on, 8-week off, or I shouldn't say really on and off, but it's a rotating schedule where the student is learning at the college for 8 weeks and then applying what he or she has just learned at the shop. So instead of going through a technical school for a year and a half or 2 years, and then you get a job in the real world and you're trying to remember what you learned 2 years ago, now you're able to, it's just fresh in your mind. You come back to the school, and maybe you identify, once you've gotten to the shop, that what you thought you knew, you didn't quite know so well. So it's kind of a feedback loop. You're able to not only just apply at the shop what you just learned, but once you're out in the shop, you can come back to school and realize that you maybe need a little help in a certain area. The pushback from insurance companies, that's something that we cover in our magazine. Drive helps out with that. I've got it lower down here. I don't want to skip around too much, but total loss frequency is rising. And part of that, used car prices have dropped. Enlight, which is the parent company of Mitchell, they just released a report, came out today. They're predicting that total losses are going to be 8.5% above the historical average growth in this country. And then to go along with that, Brittany Crow here with Drive wrote a popular article that we published a little less I guess I said, I wrote down a little less than a week ago. It was about 2 weeks ago, I believe. Included drive coach and client here explains the reasons for why more vehicles are being declared total losses, as well as how to adapt. One way to adapt is diversifying services. Here, sorry for jumping here. I would say one more item to add here is that it calls to mind my late mentor. He had a favorite saying. It was when the going gets tough, the tough turn pro. And I think it just requires shop owners and operators to really drill down and use their management system, use their coaching available, any resources to really examine where they need to improve their business. Because, I mean, 30 years ago, it was a lot easier to make a profit in this business, right? So, and now we just have to really have to do everything the right way.
Well, can I just jump in for a second when you're
Yeah, please do.
total losses? Is that I know we have a varied group of people on, in this meeting who've had, positive experiences with total losses and maybe not so positive. And I think it would be great to share how everyone is utilizing, or is there any questions about that? How can they maximize? And if they're not able to maximize because they're a DRP, what can they do to mitigate the loss? I do know, Kevin, you had some success with total losses.
Yeah, we're about 50-50 right now. Pretty much half the vehicles that come in our shop, because we're, like Jay was explaining about the blueprinting thing earlier, we're really thorough about our blueprinting process. So literally half the cars that come in will total. We don't claim that we total cars. We just give accurate information, and the insurance company makes that decision. But
Sure.
based on my experience with Drive and watching my numbers, I saw several years ago that the profitability on a total loss was just unbelievable, for the amount of work we were putting into it. And basically we just needed to keep the vehicle secure and safe until the insurance company picked it up. So we've it's become part of our business model, is that we have one person that handles all of our total loss. It's not a random thing at our shop. We have,
Mhm.
and he actually works remotely. He lives in Montana. We're in Washington State, so he doesn't have any reason to come here, but he processes every single total loss. He's very familiar with the laws in the state, and he very good at very detailed note taking. So the
Huh.
one advantage you have as a shop is that you can accurately um, document what's been going on with the total loss, because typically what will happen is the insurance company will eventually get a hold of you, want to pick up the vehicle, and they'll have some song and dance why they want a discount or this and that. And so if you have established that we've been in regular contact with you ever since the vehicle's been here, we've advised you that it's accruing storage costs, they don't have much of a case. So anyways, so we've been very successful with that. And they are typically terrible keeping notes, and you don't always talk to the same person. And the person you talk to when they're trying to wrap it up, they're not left a whole lot of ammunition on why they should even have any reason to get a discount. They just would like a discount. So we work with them a little bit, but for the most part, we stick to our guns. We have a established pattern. Um, so when it comes down to it, they pretty much pay us. And it's not a fight. It's not an argument. It's, we just present the facts, and we've been very upfront with them through the whole process. They could have picked it up 3 weeks ago. They've known about it. So that has been a huge part of our growth, honestly. Matter of fact, we bought an additional building 2 years ago to help store cars.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. It's working out for you.
It is, yeah. And we have some big plans in the future this year, and I don't see it changing. I am a little bit concerned. I was going to ask you, Jay, about if there Occasionally you'll hear about some shops that are dealing with insurance companies that want to abandon a vehicle. They're like, you know, are you hearing much of that? We did experience it once last year, and then I got a hold of our legal department, and they sent them a letter, and things, you know, got straightened out right away. So
It-
I don't know if anybody else is experiencing that, but occasionally you hear about insurance companies, you know,
Yeah,
threatening, or if they're actually doing it.
that's a good question. Yeah, I haven't heard anything recently. It seems to be kind of episodic. You know, it seems like one of those things where you'll hear about every few years or so where there's a spate of those things going on. I don't know if they just get pushed back or a nasty
Maybe,
letter from a lawyer or what it is, but it seems like it goes away for a while, then it rears its ugly head again.
yeah. Like I said, only occasionally we'll hear about it or some threat or something like that. But the last time we thought we were kind of dead in the water, and then like, you know what? Let's I've got Legal Shield. Let's give them a call, and they send a
Uh-huh.
letter out, and I'll tell you what, people all of a sudden, man, they had a whole different attitude, and they couldn't wait to pay us.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Kevin, do you have a
yeah,
checklist of any of your actions?
I'm
Do
sorry, what?
you have a checklist of any of your actions with regards to total losses?
I do. Like as far as what? I mean, I've got a job description written up. I have to take a look and see. Haven't visited in a while. And are you talking about like when do you start documenting, or I mean, what specifically are you asking about?
Well, the question was kind of prompted, do you have any steps through this? That things that you don't want to miss going through it? Like, I know you've opened up a separate building, you have someone who's managing this. Is there
Mhm.
any steps they have to go through? Is there any organizational process? Because it sounds like it's quite a bit that comes in. So how does it go from coming in as a total to someone else managing it?
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, Cassie, that was the very best thing I ever did because was having one person only, because we have typically about 13 people that work here. And if the insurance company called in and said, hey, we want to settle up on this car, we want to send somebody out, they would just randomly talk to somebody in the office, and we would be in the same boat as the insurance company. We're like, well, I don't really know what's going on, but let's see where we're at. Having one person specifically assigned to that role is it's been very helpful. He has spent a lot of time understanding the laws in our state, and they're all different, you know, in different states, different laws. But he
Sure.
understands, you know, so when somebody gets in a predicament, um, you know, he can refer back to the laws, and so it not only helps us to collect um, funds, you know, from storage, but also our customers have found it very helpful because most shops that, you know, especially a non-DRP shop, they're probably more inclined to fix a car that's, you know, borderline totaled because they don't make any money if they get totaled. But um, very helpful with making sure that the customer is, I guess, in a way, not being taken advantage of, or make sure they understand their rights and what they're entitled to when a vehicle gets totaled. So um, I wouldn't say we have a step-by-step process. I know that we have some things established on paper, some of his name's Darren, his roles and responsibilities, but um, probably the biggest thing I would say is number one, being aware of the opportunity here, having one person assigned to it, and then the note taking is huge. I've had people that aren't so good at taking notes and keeping track of things. Darren is exceptional at it, and he has collected quite a bit of money because of he's so meticulous about it. And to even make it better for him and me, he gets a portion of the money he collects. So he's really inclined to, you know, not let these guys skate. I mean, they're using, we're paying insurance to take care of these vehicles. We're responsible for them while they're here. There's a whole number of reasons that we are entitled to charge what we charge. And we don't charge any more than any other shop in the area. And that's the other thing, every area is gonna have its own, you know, standard rates. And as long as you're in the ballpark, you're not gonna really have any trouble. But those are some of the things that have been helpful for us.
Thank you. So Jay, what do the DRP shops do? The ones who can't charge as Kevin has. How do they mitigate their losses with total losses increasing?
It's a good question. It begs to mind. I had kind of a humorous editor's letter a few months back. There was a favorite SNL sketch of mine from, it's probably close to 40 years now ago, that was the change bank. That's all they did. They're in business just to make change. If you needed a crisp $20 bill for your grandson's birthday card, they could do that for you. If you needed some change for the subway, they could make the change for you. And they asked him, well, gosh, you don't make loans, you don't make loans, you don't take deposits. What's your business case? And they said, they make all they make all their money on volume. So, I mean, it was tongue in cheek, obviously, but uh, these DRPs, of course, you've got the agreements with insurance companies that you're not going to charge them for all these services. So it's another concession that it brings to mind, actually, though, that one of my points that I wrote down was that we are seeing shops turn away in small numbers, at least, but the trend is to have no DRPs or fewer DRPs. We're also learning, or I'm learning anyway, that some of these agreements are malleable. They're not, even though it's written in, it's a contract that they give to you, you don't have to accept it as it is. A lot of them have some leeway. I couldn't tell you which ones are and which ones are not, but we do know some shops that are successfully able to negotiate some of those terms. I can't tell you right now if total loss is one of them, but I do know that there are a lot of different things like that that can be negotiated on. And I have to think a lot of that's based on your volume and your long-standing reputation with, your business relationship with them too.
Yeah, I wanted to ask and put out to everyone, in light of ongoing supply chain disruptions and parts inflation, what inventory management practices can a shop implement to minimize parts delays and keep the customer happy? Any thoughts there? One of mine is diversify suppliers and build strong relationships with those suppliers.
I've also known some higher volume shops that specialize in quick turns. They go into their management system or they examine their ROs, and they know what the high volume make model vehicles are, and they will actually stock some of those high turn parts so that they can reduce their cycle time and not have to worry about supply chain disruptions. But I wouldn't advise doing too much of that, probably, unless you really knew what you were working on, because it just never fails. You have otherwise you have an extra part in stock and you keep it for 5 years, you throw it away, and then you need it next week, so.
That's a really tough one, Cassie. I mean, it's a great idea, but man, it's so random what comes in shops. I mean, there's going to be a few. I mean, we've done exactly like what you said. There's a couple like, hey, let's stock up on these, and we end up just like Jay throwing them away. So it that's a really that's a high risk situation there.
And there may not be an easy answer. I mean, I know leveraging your digital management systems helps as far as using the different softwares available to you. As far as tracking parts, kind of, seeing, who's more reliable. What's the parts that are the most, accessible, the ones that are becoming less accessible. I know that takes time. I don't know who you would dedicate to do that, if that's something that your estimator or conversation you would have. Jay, I don't know if that's been an option or a suggestion.
Yeah, I think that sounds reasonable.
And then creating relationships with local dealerships and salvage yards. And I don't know, again, that's another level of effort. And I don't know if that's something that anybody's considered.
Yeah, the only problem that I've seen and you know, we try to run 15 to 18 jobs through here a week. And 5 of them that we schedule are totaling, and that don't leave us much. That don't leave us enough for owners break even sometimes, you know what I mean? So then, do we schedule more, and then they all they all hit, you know what I mean? So it's really kind of hard to figure out, you know, how to schedule some of this stuff. And then the other thing too is how we're trying to schedule, when we do write an estimate, you know, a door estimate, you know, and let's just say it has 20 hours on it. And once we blueprint it and everything, now it's got like 35 hours on it. You know, it's kind of hard to schedule those extra hours too. So we're actually going to implement doing surveys and seeing how many hours we're actually adding to every estimate to where we can correctly try to schedule. I don't know if anybody else is doing any of that kind of work or not.
I think the biggest issue I run into with the part scenario is that you never know until you order them which ones are on a back order, that inevitably is the ones that you tear the car apart and find the part damage after the car's already here and tore down that you have to order. Then those are the ones that hold you up, not the
Sure.
ones you could ahead of time on your original estimate, have them here before you bring the car. We've got a Ford Explorer here that's waiting for molding. That's 86,000 of them on back order nationwide. I mean, what's that at home? What are you gonna do? Customer's not happy with it, but you can only do what you can do.
So
Jimmy, are you,
Yes.
sorry, Jimmy, are you blueprinting or very many of those vehicles or
Oh,
are they?
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. But as I said, it's as we're ordering stuff 2 weeks in advance for what's on the estimate. So that's all here before the car gets here. Then you can tear it apart, you can find something in behind that you can't see. And inevitably, those are the parts that you can't get on a timely manner. And that's what holds you up.
so at least it's not in production yet. You're minimizing that part, but you still got this torn apart vehicle in the way.
Right.
So I'm sure you're all struggling with customers saying, it's just too expensive. I can't do this, you know, especially if they're self-pay. So with repair costs increasing by 28% over the past 3 years, due to vehicle complexity, how can shops or what are you doing to communicate value to your customers? So one suggestion, obviously, you educate customers as to the reason behind the cost. That's always been part of collision, is that you have to educate people as to why it costs this much. You know, this is not a standard general repair. You know, that you've heard about, 200 replaced brakes, you know what I mean? This much for my gas, oil change. So that all makes sense to me. This is foreign to people. So that's always been the case. But now with the increase in costs, what are you doing to communicate the value?
Well, it's a game depending on which customer you're talking to, because some of them wouldn't understand what you're trying to tell them anyway. And some of them don't care. So you kind of have to play the customer on what kind of information they want to hear. But yeah, it's definitely an education game.
And you have to highlight the long-term value. Greg, were you going to say something?
Well, I think, the easiest route to go is our labor rate is so suppressed. It's pretty easy to say to a customer, hey, we only charge X amount of dollars for our labor rate. Take that down to your local dealership that's double the amount of money, right? So, it's kind of a blame game. We're doing our part as a shop owner to keep the cost down for, you're telling this to a customer, but we can't control what our paint right supplies have driven up so much, what the parts cost, right? The car manufacturers have made these vehicles so complex that it really isn't the shop that's driving these prices up. So I think if you use that as your leverage, to try to upsell, some of these people get it. You know what I mean? People looking at replacing vehicles, they've price shopped and they don't like it. So, do you spend a little money here to keep the vehicle looking good, or do you start washing your hands and moving on to a different vehicle?
Sure.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't take very long to point out the $3,000-4,000 headlights and the $2,000 mirrors and the high point pieces that gets that number up there quickly.
Right.
Yeah, I typically just agree with them when they say it's a lot of money. I'm like, yeah, you're telling me it is a lot of money.
It is, yeah.
And Kevin, I'm in Wenatchee, so I make sure they understand that the governor wants a tax on everything in this place. He had never seen a tax he didn't like.
You're in Wenatchee. Did you take over, what was his name?
Yes.
Earhart's.
Mhm.
Huh?
Earhart's.
Yeah, you did?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah,
With Lisa, his sister-in-law. Yeah.
okay. Are you related then?
No. No, I was here when Brandon was still here. And Lisa and Eric, the brother and sister-in-law, were owners then too. They bought Brennan out when he moved to Montana.
Yeah, I've seen him in Montana a couple times. He's friends with friends of mine over there. It's a small
Yeah.
world. Yeah.
All right, so EVs, they're here. And they may not grow as fast as maybe the plan was, but they're here and they're probably not going to go anywhere. So what is your shop doing to prepare for them? Either your technicians, safety protocols, equipment.
Making sure they don't kill themselves first.
All right, so once they get to you though, without killing themselves, what is the shop going to do?
We haven't particularly gone after that type of work, but we are electric certified, so we're aware of, we've taken the classes and we have the necessary equipment and stuff. So if we have to deal with them, we can, but like you were saying, Jay, I think you said the market was what'd you say, going to be 6.6%. So it's not a huge market, and it's probably some shops may want to specialize in it, not us, but we will have to be aware of it, and we're able to work with them. But in our particular case, it's not something we're gonna like, spend a whole lot of money and go after and try to attract, but they're naturally gonna come in.
Sure. And of course, I want to point out too, that's a nationwide number. So if you're in California, it's going to be higher than that. And if you're here in Missouri, it's going to be lower and worth even, it's even less of an attractive proposition probably right now to tool up for it.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm not sure if you guys can hear me.
Loud
Yeah.
and clear.
Yeah, perfect. So I'm from Vancouver, BC in Canada, and we have quite a bit of EVs. And
Yeah.
asked the group, what did they do to actually become like competent if they did want to, fix EVs and so forth? Because that's what a lot of some of my staff say, we're not going to touch the car. I know in America it's ASE. Over here we have iCar. I believe you guys do too, but besides
Yes.
being Tesla certified, what did the group do to be able to have technicians that feel like, yes, we know our stuff, let's rock and roll and fix this car?
High car certification.
All right, so that can be kind of pricey and lengthy. Do you want to walk us through what that looked like?
I wish I could, but I didn't do it myself. Everybody else in the shop did. So
You organized it though, right? You paid for
yeah,
it.
I gave him
Yeah.
a thumbs up. I said, go for it. There's gonna be some expense. There's some safety equipment you're gonna have to buy and just some training. I'll tell you what, Robbie, if you wanted to contact me, I could put you in touch with my office manager, and she spearheaded the whole thing, and she could tell you a little bit more about what the cost would be. And, I don't think it took too long. So, yeah.
Doesn't, in order to be iCar certified, doesn't everybody, or at least a majority of the people in the shop have to go through the training?
Yeah, some of them. I'm not. See, I don't even know the answer to that either. But I know several of the people did take the class. She handles all the iCar stuff, so she would be the person I would have to defer that question to. But like I said, Robbie, if you want to get a hold of me later, I can put you in touch with her.
Sounds good, Kevin. Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Yeah, Cassie, to answer that, it can be an individual technician for that role. It wouldn't, but it's just to be gold class for the whole shop. They need them all to be recognized in their individual roles. And then there's another, and we work a lot with iCar, but there's also this energy security agency, Dirk Fuchs, or I think he pronounces it Fuchs. He came from iCar last. He had worked for another company before that. And that's another company that specializes in guidance and training for that. So, there's training, there's placards, if nothing else, just a big a big laminated page telling people to stay away from it because it hasn't been de-energized yet. Another thing that I would be worried about is because I even worked in a mechanical shop as a service advisor before, and we would get some wrecked vehicles. So even though we weren't a collision shop, but we would get vehicles that maybe had mostly undercarriage damage that a mechanical shop could repair. There was one that, needed a new cradle and a knee assembly, which, like your knuckle and strut and so on. And with EVs, you've got to be careful about that because there may be damages you can't see yet. So there's procedures to make sure that thing's quarantined until you can evaluate the health of that. And there's, you can use a voltmeter, and you can use a thermal camera to make sure there aren't any hot spots that are starting in the battery pack underneath and things like that. But the concern, of course, is that you get a tow truck dropping off a vehicle after 5 o'clock on a Friday or at whatever whatever your business hours are, and it's sitting there all weekend without having been checked. So there are shops that are putting up these I'm not sure the actual name for them, but they look like big concrete Lego blocks that they stack up, kind of like for storing silage in, if you've ever seen that. And so they actually put them in there in that stall outside, well away from all other vehicles, so that if they were to catch fire, they're not going to catch the next vehicle on fire too.
Yeah, those are ecology blocks, and that's a great way to do it. But it is. We took a really good class. It was about a 2-hour course at when I was at SEMA this year, just a couple months ago,
Oh
and
yeah.
we talked about this kind of thing. And one thing that if you haven't done EVs before, which we hadn't, we learned a lot of stuff like what you just said. Tow truck driver brings it in. Naturally, it's like, oh yeah, just bring it in the shop, and that could be potentially a terrible situation. The thing, you know. It may have a mind of its own, the electric car, and it re-energizes in the middle of the night, and it's got some severed wires, and all of a sudden you're lighting your whole building on fire. So there was like a 24-hour, it's just some of the things that they taught us, like where you want to quarantine the car for like 24 hours before you do anything with it. But yeah, there's definitely a learning curve. I wasn't aware of any of that stuff, and I was really kind of surprised at how little I knew.
Yeah, if it were me, I would at least brush up on some of the basics just because of that scenario, just because it might get hoisted upon you without even your permission or knowledge. So
And not only that, if it actually did catch on fire, you ain't gonna get it out. So those lithium batteries are a real bear. So you pretty much that thing's gonna burn to the ground. So yeah.
yeah, the most
Yeah.
I was just gonna say the most effective treatment it seems like I've seen is the fire blanket. Looks like kind of like a softer welding blanket version,
Yeah.
and they drape it over the whole thing.
And we do have one of those. They're quite heavy, but I think that contains it. That because the fire is inside the battery, and it's gonna probably
uh,
still continue to burn. Yeah, yeah. I was really surprised on how much I had no idea that was even possible. So it could potentially be a very hazardous and dangerous situation if a guy is working on them, and doesn't have the knowledge or the expertise or tooling for it.
So
We have
because
a
they're so dangerous, do you have to have special insurance for those type of vehicles for your
I,
shop?
oh, you're asking Kevin probably, aren't you? Yeah,
Whoever.
yeah.
I I don't think we've had a change. Let me think about that for a second. I take that back. Actually, I think we did because we just reviewed all that recently, and I know it seems like that was brought up. I believe so. Yeah, I think it is. They're gonna have because we did have to raise our garage keepers insurance level. Yeah,
Because the environmental cleanup's a big concern, right? With those.
yeah, yeah. It could get quite expensive.
Thank you. We had a question in the chat. How to schedule better with so many cars totaling out? Jay, do you have, and Kevin, you may have, well, actually, that probably doesn't impact you. But Jay, do you have any opinion about that?
it's a bit of a stumper for me, really. I mean, if you're already, especially if you're already blueprinting everything,
Well, the thing is, I mean, for me, I'm gonna roll out the red carpet but if you're a DRP shop and you're trying to navigate it, you just need to know what percentage of vehicles come in on a regular basis that are gonna total. So
oh, okay.
if it's, you know, I'm just gonna pick an easy number, let's just say it's 50%, then you know, and you need 10 cars in your shop to be working on out of those, so you know you need to get 20 cars in a week, because you still need 10 are gonna total, and you need, so I think it's just a little bit of a math equation. For me, I don't, we welcome totals because we charge for them, but if you're not charging and you're trying to solely rely on repairing vehicles to make a profit in this business, you got to figure out how to get that number. Because it's only going to go up higher. The last I was reading up on it from Kristen Felder, she was saying it was going to go, I can't remember the numbers, but we're already at 50%, but some of the shops that aren't quite that high, they were saying it was a higher percent, you know, every year it's gonna increase. I think you alluded to that too earlier, Jay.
Yeah, that's what I meant, Kevin, for DRPs. And so really, I've always thought it has to be volume, but you really drill down and saying, well, just try to do the math, like really on average, how many come in a week that are
Right.
total?
You
You
should be
know,
able to pick, I mean, you can do a week or do a month to say, okay, well, but basically come up with a percentage. Say, okay, well, in our situation here, 20% are totaling. Okay, so we know that we need to get 20% more vehicles so that we have enough to keep the shop busy.
If
Right.
you've got a lot of shops though in your area and you're fighting, let's just say that you get to the point where you're 75% totaling, and then you get to the point where you ain't got no work in the shop, then what?
Or who are you asking, Wade?
Well, anyhow, I mean, you know what I'm saying? That's kind of where we're at, you know what I mean? You know, it's whether you know, you total everything or you send people home. You know, I think that's kind of where the industry's going, you know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, if we could all make money off of totals, that'd be great, you know, but even the insurance companies are getting wise to, they know that their salvage is worth X amount of dollars, you know what I mean? And they only have to pay that customer one time, they can send it off, you know? So it's gonna cut the body shops totally out, you know what I mean? Just like them, if they get wise to, you know, Kevin making X amount of dollars, you know, what I mean, they're just gonna not send them, they're just gonna straight take them to Copart, you
Uh-huh.
know,
Yeah, they already try to do that. Our customer,
right?
yeah.
So increasing the car count. So Wade, you're just saying even with increased car count, that the ratio is such that it's hard for independent to have repairs.
Yeah, I mean, we as a shop all have to do, I mean, great, we blueprint and we try to write every single thing, you know what I mean? But you know, we're even to the point where we're getting in trouble with the tax because we was getting paid for things that we're not getting paid for now. You know what I mean? Like the insurance companies are really honing down on these estimates, and they keep pulling things off the estimates, you know, and then we're having to submit them back. And then we're waiting 2 more days to get an okay on it. Or we have to do all this documentation to prove we need this feather prime block, this and that, you know what I mean? So they're really bucking the stuff, you know? So it's like, we all got to give a little bit, you know, the insurance got to give, the body shop's got to give, everybody's got to give a little bit just to keep, you know, working the door too.
Wade, I don't know if you've already been doing this, but I was going to ask, have you found if being more thorough with the documentation helps at all with some of that pushback?
Um, it does, but they still, I mean, trust me, they spend more money than what we do on education on how to defer paying the body shops.
Right.
And so they know exactly what to do, and they know if we eventually get paid for it, but if they send it, if we have to play cat and mouse to get paid for it, you know, and then it delays that job by a week, you know what I mean? And if you've got, you know, if you're trying to run 20, 30 jobs through every week, you know, and 10 of them are just sitting there, like we can't do nothing with them, we're waiting, you know what I mean? That's a problem too.
Sure.
So I don't know. It's a game.
It's gonna keep getting tougher, Wade, honestly, because more cars are gonna be totaling. It's just the way that's what the direction it's going. I don't know, I know where you live, I know your situation, I know you don't have, you're not in a big city or anything like that, so, I don't know if there's any other way to draw more people in from further out or something.
Well, I mean, we're drawing for a pretty good ways. I mean, we do, you know, we do a lot from a lot of different counties, a lot of different areas and stuff. So we are getting quite a bit of the market share. I mean, we really are. But when you're still, you know, if you're trying to schedule 20 jobs a week, you know, and that's really all you can really sell and get in, you know, and 10 of them are totaling, you know, and we actually need to do 18, you know, I mean, that's a pretty, the math don't add up always.
Well, one of the things that I'm able to do a lot, if I have that scenario where I've had a few that have either canceled or dropped off or had a no-show or whatever, I always have cars waiting that I don't need parts for and on the schedule. And most of those people are happy to not wait another 3 or 4 weeks to get in to get it done. So I mean, that's the way I fill my schedule up with some of those slots.
Are those customer pay jobs?
Either way, whether it's insurance or self-pay.
To just kind of have some backup is all what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm scheduled out quite a ways, and so it's pretty easy to find a couple a week if I need to bring them in. Usually don't need that
How far are you scheduled right now?
April.
Wow.
It's crazy.
We're not experiencing that kind of thing here.
It's a very weird market. There's a lot of shops, and every one of us over here are at least 2 months out.
Wow.
It's been that way since COVID hit. It's a good problem to have, but it's frustrating. You can never get caught up.
Yeah.
So Jay, and everybody else, technicians, you spoke about recruiting. You spoke about going to certain schools that have a different innovative way of training their techs, which I like it. You learn it and then you can perform it. That's even better for the collision owner. But what about retention once you have your tech? Is there any industry standards as far as, you know, getting a technician and keeping a technician as far as what they're looking for?
I think broadly speaking, the shop owners and operators are looking at ways to make their shops a more welcoming environment, because we are competing against other trades like plumbing or construction or something like that. Air conditioned shops, they used to be pretty rare. I'm gonna guess that's probably fairly common in most areas where it gets hot and humid in the summer these days. It's not cheap, but they all report increased productivity and fewer temper tantrums and things like that. It doesn't hurt the quality of the work you're putting out. You know, the materials that you're able to use in a more consistent environment for your body filler and things like that. But that's almost, I wouldn't say that's the floor, but I am seeing even beyond that. You know, I think we're even working on a story in the future for some shops that are doing things like they've got a gym that the company owns, whether it's attached or nearby, or, you know, they've got some fancy break room. And so there's lots of these creature comforts. It's not just the pay that goes along with it. Things like celebrating their accomplishments, or, you know, like I've seen shops that have banners that say, you know, Jay Sect, he's been at this shop for 20 years and, you know, he's ICAR Platinum or something like that, you know, and whatever certifications and recognitions they have. So it's not always just the actual paycheck, but I don't know what clients here have done differently or seen, but
As far as benefits go, has that been, you know, a resounding, have you heard that's important?
it's not something we really talk about all that much. I would say it's probably remained fairly constant. I think in our business it's almost a given that they, you know, offer health insurance, but I mean that's a tough one.
Okay. And then I wanted to move into, consolidation. We have a lot of the chains who are eating up the independents. So is the plan, do most shops plan then to make themselves desirable to be bought out? Or what services can they add to make themselves more attractive to customers? So that they don't have to sell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's I guess I'll answer the second part first. So the diversification, there's just, I guess you have to kind of look at your market and see what there's a need for. Truck accessories would be a common add-on if you're in a market that has a lot of it could be upfitting too, where you're, if you've got a lot of construction companies or oil field trucks or whatever the local industry is, where you're putting a service truck body on, things like that. Media blasting, powder coating, there are some low volume options available for that, for offering those services. And anything else that you could think of, like painting bridge railings for the local road department, things like that. But for consolidation, I would say that that's still a trend where seems like most shops are looking at growing at least to 2 or 3 shops. There are advantages to that because, as we were talking about, the costs for tooling and training for, say, EVs or aluminum intensive vehicles or whatever the case may be, or an OEM certification program, you can kind of load level, well, not load level in this case, but you're going to be sending that vehicle to that one shop instead of having to have the same training and equipment costs for 1/2 of the volume or 1/3 of the volume, whatever the case may be, whether you have 2 or 3 shops. So there are advantages to that. And then there's also, you don't have to sell. I mean, you can be part of a network like the Certified Collision Group. That's not owned by that. That's a network of shops that are OEM certification heavy. And then there are franchise affiliations, with CarStar and Fix Auto and things like that, where you get some of the same benefits, but not selling out. So lots of different options there now. I hope that answered some of it.
No, it gives an idea. And I know one of the offerings can be Addis. And not sure how many people have integrated that service into their shop. And is that something that, anybody has found important?
We, I'm surprised. I was going to look what the stats were on that, the people reporting that they don't do that. It's one of those labor operations that it's important for most vehicles nowadays to do, whether you're doing it or subletting it. The good news is that it's becoming more accessible as far as the number of sublet providers that will come in, whether it's mobile or remote. There's all kinds of different combinations. You can own your own targets and scan tool and have remote assistance on setting it up, or you can outsource it all. Maybe there's a mobile company that comes by and has their own target and their own scan tool, etc. But it's I ran into a situation about 5 years ago with my wife's car, and she needed a new windshield. It was a 2019 Volkswagen Tiguan, and I knew it had some ADAS features, but I couldn't find in the owner's manual. I couldn't find online at the time. I even looked in a third-party service repair information site. I couldn't find anything about how to identify if this vehicle needed a calibration after the windshield was replaced. It turns out that it did not have a forward camera in the windshield. It had radar in the grille that was doing some of these features. But my mother-in-law had a similar vehicle, but it was a higher trim level, and it did have a camera in the windshield. So the point I'm getting to is that there are companies such as REVV, that can tell you how that vehicle is equipped and what all procedures are required to do that. So it's one of those things that if you don't get it right, it can cause big problems. I mean, if you've ever sighted in a rifle, you know how it doesn't take much movement of that sight, of that iron sight, or much movement on the scope knob to downrange for that bullet to be way off, and you're just barely moving it a hair. So it's the same thing with the way that vehicle's pointed. It's the vehicle might be aligned, but the camera's looking across then it's wanting to steer you into the next lane, to the opposing lane. So as an extreme example. The ROI, I don't think I have any numbers on how that has worked out for them. But it is a profit center for many shops, though. I would say we have an article on that next month, in fact. And what I found that a lot of shops are doing is they have a separate facility for that. And so you can either use their, and they do that because you might not want to take your vehicle to Jay's Auto Body to get the ADAS calibrated, but you'll take it to, best rate ADAS calibration next door to my shop, because we're not competitors. So there's a little bit of psychology involved there, but we're seeing a lot of that.
We're doing that right now.
Oh,
You say you're installing one right now?
Yeah, we have it installed. We've been utilizing it. In fact, we actually ended up getting a tow truck and the ADAS equipment under one facility. And so, we kind of just named it, just next door specialties, whatever you want to name it. And I mean, whether or not another tow company is bringing in a vehicle, that tow company pays say it's Auto Express Towing that drops a car off. Well, then, out of our tow company's checkbook, they'll pay the tow bill, and then they'll make up a new bill that we submit to insurance and say, hey, this is our tow bill. And we get that. And then on top of that, when we do an ADAS calibration, it's the same deal. I mean, we kind of make our own price, and when the insurance company balks at us and says we only pay off of a sublet invoice, I'm like, okay, no problem. I'll get you a sublet invoice.
That's right.
Right here. It works out nice.
It's smart business.
so Jordan, would you say for the cost that went into it, you did a cost benefit analysis, how was your return on investment?
Well, for us, it's a little different because I have a mechanical shop, and then we also have the body shop. That's where both the towing and the ADAS really kind of come into play, because so it's really helpful. It's worth it for us, just again, with everything that the mechanical shop does. We repair these ADAS systems, or to do a radiator or air conditioning repair, front bumper has to come off. Guess what? ADAS needs calibration. Rear bumpers, park sensors, all that kind of stuff, just in the normal mechanical world, that requires ADAS calibration. So kind of between the two shops, it really works out nicely. I mean, we're doing a calibration every day.
Oh, wow.
Usually not more than one, but usually every day at least someone is in that shop. And it just so happened that in our body shop area, we have a random, it's not quite cold storage, it's basically cold storage with a heater, but it's just a room. It was plywood walls and concrete floor, no windows, and so we just painted the wall white and put decent lighting in there, and it works perfect for ADAS calibrations because there's no metal, it's a flat floor, concrete, white room, no windows, no sunlight, nothing. It's perfect for ADAS, and that's what we use.
That's great. Any idea what you expect your ROI to be?
I don't know that. I did meet with the rep when he was selling it to us. And I mean, I guess at the end of the day, I knew that I'm 33 years old. I'm going to be doing this for a while. Regardless of what my return on investment, I figured that if we're going to continue for the next 30 years, I know that ADOS isn't going away. If anything, it's going to become more prominent. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I can't say that I sat down and figured that out, but I knew that, hey, we're gonna need this. And that kit, I mean, I say 40,000. I think that's what we spent on it, was like a total of 40,000. And I say that, that's a lot of money, but I mean, if anybody's interested in it, the Autel makes the kit, and it's awesome. It's really great. Their basic kit comes with anything from Chevys to Mercedes, targets and stuff. Some of it you'll never use, and some of it you use all the time. I would say that right now, we've owned it for 5 months, and I mean, we've billed well over 20,000 in ADOS and the random,
Oh yeah.
but I mean, I'm paying the tech to do the time. So I mean, however you want to calculate your tech hours and what you have into labor and versus what you have in the equipment costs. I mean, I don't think that we're going to do this for another 3 years and it won't be paid off.
Right. And I've talked with people because I had a concern because some vehicles have more than one method of being able to calibrate them. They can be static calibrated, as we're talking about here with the targets sitting
Yeah.
still inside a big room, or they can be self-calibrating or dynamic, where
And
you're
my techs kind of choose what they want to do, and that system
okay.
allows you to do both if it's possible.
Okay.
The nice thing about static is, we live in North Dakota. I mean,
Mhm.
it can be blizzarding out for 4 days.
Right.
But I'm not going to wait for the weather to be perfect and then the roads to be perfect in order for the camera to see the dotted line and see the
That's
white
right.
line. And I can't rely that stuff's going to be good enough for me to go and do a dynamic learn.
Right.
I don't want to wait to get paid till the weather's good, because Joe needs his car back regardless of what Mother Nature has planned.
That's right. That was one of my next point. That was my question. A year ago, I'd asked Andy Tilka with Tag Calibrations. He's got we just did I did not write the article. I was editing it. And I was surprised to see he's got 14 or 16 centers now across the country. And when I talked to him a year ago, I think he had just a few. But I asked him, that was going to be my concern before somebody sinks tens of thousands of dollars in investment and static targets and all that. And some of these, I think you can push a button in the car. I don't think you even need a scan tool. And he said, well, the problem is, just like you said,
Yeah.
you can't rely on Mother Nature to be cooperative when you need to do it. And all the factories, I'm told, use static calibration before, on the assembly line before they go out
Correct.
the door. So
Yeah,
it's not
static
going
is
away.
the default way of calibrating it, and
Mhm.
every car will always have a static. But I have been told by some OEM engineers that the preferred method is going to be switched to dynamic, and which is still fine. I mean, if you live somewhere where weather isn't really a big deal, and mostly snow or fog or something where it's visually obstructing. Rain
Right.
doesn't seem to bother it much.
Hmm.
But still, for us, even if dynamic is possible, most of the time, if the weather's bad, it doesn't matter. I can still pull it in, get a static one done.
Yeah.
Jordan, do you work for the public, or is this just for in-house?
I mean, for in-house right now, we have a few other body shops up in the area and a few mechanical shops in the area that reach out to us to do the calibrations. And I mean,
Okay.
I will tell you that probably for an hour or an hour and a half of your time, a typical ADOS, I mean, body shop owners should know what we're paying, you know, say some advanced ADOS shop down the road to do the ADOS equipment. I mean, we were paying, you know, anywhere from $500 to $800 a car, depending on what it was. And for an hour and a half worth of work, that's what we get paid. So, I mean, you think about your labor rate, and when it comes to ADOS, that's why we did it, because the ROI, it just made sense. Like I said, I don't have the numbers for you, but that's
Yeah.
that's what we're doing. Is it takes sometimes it's 30 minutes, sometimes it's an hour and a half, depending on the car, depending on the type of radar you're setting up or calibration you're doing. But I mean, you're seeing, you know, $600 in charges for an hour's worth of your time. Well, I mean, you tell me if that's worth it or not.
Yeah, well, that's great.
I think Cassie too, Fennell in the past had told us that when he got his, he was doing all of his pre and post scans through his ADAS system to be able to charge more because they were an ADAS scan versus just a regular scan. So that was increasing his profit center there as well. And then real quick to go back, this last summer, we went to Green Bay to a monster shop. That's our top 20 group. We were talking about things to, I can't show you, things to show you or to do for employees. And every employee in this monster shop had a plaque on the wall that had their name on it and a team member since and the date that they started and what
Yeah.
their certification was and their technician status. And I mean, right down to the janitor, the detailers, everybody had that. And they all said good things about how that made them feel, that they felt appreciated. And it's nothing huge.
Mhm.
I definitely am in the process of getting that put together here. It's those little things that mean more than you think.
Oh, nice.
We had a question, wanted to check with the group their opinion on what services or value added services their paint company does for them.
Yeah,
Takes our money.
sorry to interrupt.
Their money?
Sorry, the reason why I ask is because, you know, I've been using my paint company for a million years and we do good volume, and everything kind of just fell down with the extra service of them helping me take me to the next level and so forth. Just because my demeanor is not that guy that's always pushing and asking for this and that. And now that I got 2 stores, you know, I always get people coming to ask for my business, but I always shoo them away. But this year with my strategic planning, I said, you know, I want to take my shop to the next level. So let me put out a bid. I put my guys on notice, my current vendor, and right away, these guys, like right now, I'm looking at my cameras, they got a team of 6 guys in my shop, observing the shop, everything else. And now they're right back up to saying, oh, you know, Robbie will take care of the, you know, I said, put it in writing, let me see what's going on, because it just feels like if I wasn't approaching them or asking them, they would just put me to the side and drop off the paint and let it be. But now by me putting that out there, because now I just see that it's a competitive market out there and they want the shops with the big numbers. And now I can see them doing it. So now I've just put a bid out to all the big boys in my area to say, what can you know, how are you going to provide me value added services, and, you know, how can you help take my shop to the next level? So since a pretty big group we got here, I just want to ask if anybody has any input on, you know, what they get from their paint supplier, not numbers wise, but just in value added services and, you know, things that maybe I should know about.
I can tell you, you already hit it. Just the competition level alone keeps them on their toes. All you gotta start doing is talking about switching to another manufacturer. And it's amazing how many clearing or how many paint reps will show up that you haven't seen in 5 years. To the point where I had another company bring in a line to try. And I hadn't seen a PPG rep in 3 years. And I couldn't get them out of my shop for a week after that. So yeah, there's no question, especially if you have 2 stores with the same product, you start talking to the 2 stores, and Jack can tell you about that too, because he just made that switch back to a first store from our top 20 group. And there's no question that the competition is your biggest driver on getting them to do what you want them to do.
That's good. Thank you for that input.
All right, so great question. Is there any other questions that are not necessarily having to do with the questions that we outlined here? All right, Jay, do you want to wrap it up with a kind of a final overview? I know you started with some, concerning topics of 2025 so far, but as far as where the industry is going, any closing thoughts?
Not really any different than my intro, I suppose. It just requires constant vigilance, I suppose. I mean, our industry, as in what you all do, is like probably like mine. I mean, more is asked of you to make the same profit, or just like my business, more gets added every day. So just have to be cognizant of what's going on, I guess. And as Robbie was mentioning, get help from your supplier. There are added services there too, where I mentioned the heat maps, where they can tell you what the vehicle population is, and they've got lots of other research too that they can share with you if you dig deep enough. Or I shouldn't say if you dig deep enough, but if your local jobber rep, for example, if he or she digs deep enough.
And
But other than that, yeah, I'd say just the 3 T's, probably the theme for the year.
And sorry, Jay, you had mentioned about CCG group prior. And
Yes.
so they're pretty small here in Canada. I'm in BC, so they're just rolling out. But to the people in America, I would actually highly recommend them because it's hard to know on the surface, but once you're involved with them, I find it a good benefit, well-run, good organization. So I share that with everyone as well too.
Oh, thank you, Robbie. I appreciate that.
I haven't heard about it. What CCG, what's that?
It's you know what it is. It's really hard to explain, and it's more of an ownership conversation. So I think if you connect with the vendor, they'll actually share it with you because it's made for businesses that are really trying to move forward with rebate structure and many other services. So Kevin, I think you actually should just reach out to them and just say you're referred by whoever, because it's kind of a close-knit circle. And I think you'll be very happy. So it's just one of those things you got to have that conversation with them one-on-one.
Kind of sounds like it might be part of One Collision.
It's Certified Collision Group is what I just Googled with it.
Okay.
Well, I would just say overall that, this consolidation is one thing that I've just noticed increasing. Even the shop owners at Drive talking about, well, I got this offer, or I'm thinking about selling, or my biggest competition now is Caliber, which is growing, or some other chains that are moving into smaller towns. One thing I will say is collision is a need. And general repair is a need as well. But people can, change their batteries out in their backyard. They can change their own tires if they needed to. Some people are skilled enough to do that. Collision is a need. Now, the question is, who's going to fill it? So is it going to be you, the independent? Is it going to be, a chain? Who is it going to be? Is it going to be the dealership? So I think that if you go with that, you have a place. So the question is what place do you want to have in it? How big of a place do you want to have? And then figure out the steps to do that. And that's really just up to you. And some of this other stuff that happens outside source, whether it changes more ADAS, EV, whatever the case may be, it's the same need. There's some of the factors have changed. And so I just think you are the owner are very much in control of it. If you sit back, you get informed and you make the plan and you adjust. All right. Well, thank all of you for coming. And again, this is going to be, one of many. And, we have a very strong group here. And, I don't know why collision always seems to feel like they're this stepchild of auto repair, but you're not. And what I love is how quiet is kept. You guys have like this quiet strength. You all do very well. And which just makes you very cool because you don't need to announce it all the time, but you guys have some tough challenges, and I really like to see you guys come together as a group. And I'm very, I'm happy to be a part of it. And Jay, thank you very much for coming and speaking with us, and and being so just very accessible.
Well, thank you so much. I've enjoyed talking with you all.